His Excellency Babatunde Fashola, Governor of Lagos State. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you for
Good to
having
have
me.
you around.
Good morning.
Happy birthday, by the way. A belated one at that.
Thank you.
Well, let's start off with this perspective because I know that the federal government said recently that for the economy of the country to move forward, to make an appreciable progress, Lagos holds the key. But in terms of infrastructure, increasing population on a regular basis, which you also talked about, is it overwhelming coping with the challenges of developing infrastructure in the state?
Well, it can be quite suffocating, almost. But you see, we have underspent as a country in our commercial capital. And it is a place that continues to attract easily the largest number of our citizens from far and near because of the opportunities inherent in them. And if you deal with what I call enterprise management, you will strike the biggest blow at economic growth for the country if you achieved a lot of growth in Lagos. The biggest port is here, the sea and air, the financial services, and so much of that. Of course, your largest market is here. So this is the window by which the world perceives Nigeria. I don't know many people who have been beyond Accra. So you get your perception of Ghana from Accra. If electricity works here, the perception will be that Nigeria is solving its power problem. So we have underinvested, simply put.
But do you have this perception that the government has sort of recognized that and then they seem to be doing a lot now to ensure that things also work out in the state?
Well, it's difficult to agree with you. Recognition really does not go that far. Recognition doesn't wake up the economy. And I think this point really does not need rocket science for anybody to know that this is the largest contributor to the country's GDP. It's easily the largest economy, sub-Saharan Africa. And on its own, almost a nation, given its size. When you compare countries like Sierra Leone, Liberia, Togo, and all of that. So, really, what is missing now is activity. And when you look at the way we have planned our national economy, I don't see, with all of the goodwill, the good intention that may be expressed, the article of faith is the budget. How much is in the budget for Lagos?
Can we ask, I mean, based on all that you've said, can we ask what your relationship is with the federal government?
I couldn't but have a normal and sustainable relationship with the federal government of Nigeria. The prosperity of this state, and indeed the remaining 35 states, would be the prosperity of the national government. So questions of relationships are not really the issue. Developmental issues don't have much to do with relationships.
Now, it's very important we ask this because this is on the back of, previous relationships between the government at Lagos state level and the government at the federal level. We know that it wasn't always rosy in the past, and we also know that, they have two different political parties, possibly with two different political ideologies, and sometimes politics does come to play in these matters when it comes to money. And one would think that if you have, say, a better relationship with them, it should be able to translate, say, into a better budget for Lagos state.
Perhaps you want to show me, even in the states where the other party has presence, where you have seen such better budgets.
Okay, so is it a matter of constraint on the part of the federal government then?
Look, I don't think that I could speak for the federal government really, because I don't wear the shoes that they wear. And something that is perhaps very easy to do really is to criticize. But I think that we could have a better budget. I think so, in terms of how much we are investing in renewing and providing infrastructure to sort of address the deficit that our growing population is creating. And you see, every time we invest more in infrastructure, we're actually saving money. If, for example, we want to create jobs, and I think we're looking at the wrong places, we're missing the little things. if there was a reliable road network, for example, from Lagos to Kano, you can imagine maybe how many more of the Ekene Dilichukus, Izuchuku transports you see. So that sector of our economy has almost really been wiped out of existence. Now, if you have transportation business again returning, you would have people who are selling tires, who are selling batteries, who are selling brake pads, who are selling brake fluid, and now almost everybody's flying. So I think we should focus on those very little things, really,
you know, when
that have much more exponential effect on driving the national economy. Roads will do that. And we hear good statements, and matter of factly, about agriculture. But agriculture certainly has a longer gestation period. And once the right things are being said, as I said, it's not really about who is where. It's really about people. And the people really don't matter how we feel about ourselves. They don't care how we feel about ourselves. They're more concerned really about which one of us is able to better provide upon their expectations.
Well, when we talk about people, you talk about people flying, we'll also come back to that and talk about why Lagos is not thinking of getting its airport. But again, the best part of a journalist
we're not just thinking about getting an airport.
The best part of a journalist is when you're in the field, and we can say Lagos is the better part of our field now. Because we're here in Lagos. When you started out...
in Ogun.
No, this is Lagos State. I was thinking you were going to bring the map, and this is the side. This is the side of Lagos State. So let's not even run away from that.
He's trying to escape from something.
Yes, we know.
No, but seriously,
we know.
seriously.
This is the side of
one
Lagos.
side of you is in Ogun, one side of, but it's really of not any serious moment.
All right. We wanted to explore that moment when you started out, the landscaping and all those beautiful things. The last time some of us saw those things were in some other places. But for a moment, people thought Governor Fashola was a flower planting governor. And after a moment again, they said, well, now you have your second term. You have kind of slowed down. I'm quite sure people have gotten that story to you. Have you slowed down?
It's impossible to slow down if I sleep at 3 a.m. and wake up at 6 a.m. and nothing has changed. I haven't taken a vacation in the 5 years that I've been in government, and in the 10 years that I served in the government of Lagos State, I've never had a vacation that has lasted more than 1 week when I was chief of staff. But I have not gone on. So really, I think that the sense really is that, one, many of the structures that we built are now working. So you will see less of me. We know what the problems are now. We've gone round, we've taken polls, we've done studies, we've held town hall meetings. And some of the things we need to do now have a longer gestation period to implement. And of course, we're fixing structures. We built classrooms, but now classrooms don't teach. It's teachers who teach. So we're looking at the teachers, we're looking at the learning environment, we're looking at the curriculum, and we're finding that students have been promoted, for example, on the basis of only 30%. Now, when they're terminal exams, we require them to score a minimum of 50%. So we're making changes there. We're seeing that parents are not involved in what is happening in the schools, and we're saying parents must attend a minimum number of parent-teachers association meetings now. And we're seeing so many other things. We're seeing skills that our teachers need, and we are providing training to provide those skills. So, and in the same way, if you look at, for example, Public Works Corporation, in the early days, I had to go and find out where there was a pothole and get there, move people there. Public Works Corporation is up and running. Lagos State Electricity Board is up and running. Young kids are fixing and maintaining our street lights and street poles now. So my work is now disaggregating into a team. We're building institutions, so you will see less of me.
Excellent. So when you talk about education now, we've seen some schools being renovated, but again, let's not forget the state-owned tertiary institution, LASU, and I'm quite sure the students there will not even forgive us if we don't ask you about what you're doing about LASU, as well as their tuition fees. We have a particular tweet that you will love to see, and you'll be amazed. They say, please ask him, well, did he pay such in Uniben? And we just struggled over that. So maybe you tell them what exactly you were aiming to achieve by doing all of those things in LASU what kind of model you intend to create in LASU that you have changed the tuition fees to something they say is astronomical?
Well, excuse me, I think that this is another opportunity to restate our position on the matter. First of all, and this is part of the linkage from the first question, everything that happens in government, I think we shouldn't personalize governance. It's not a one-man show. Now, the decision to raise fees in LASU was a recommendation from a visitation panel that I set up. That visitation panel was set up at the request of the students. They went to the House of Assembly. And they said their school had become a glorified secondary school. Those were their words. We set up the panel, and the decision to raise tuition was only one of the several recommendations that were made that we accepted, including investment in infrastructure there, including recruitment of more teachers, more lecturers, and so many other things. Now, we have implemented all of these decisions. One seems particularly touchy, which is the question of school fees. But the question really to ask is, when we had the idea of free education, it was revolutionary. It was novel because we had a very high level of illiteracy. The illiteracy levels in our country have moved from 1959. Now, all of what we are speaking about today is the quality of our education. People are more literate than they were 40, 50 years ago. But what is the quality of education that is coming out of our institutions? And we see that people are willing, in pursuit of qualitative education, to go and pay more as close as Republic of Benin, as close as Ghana. And you know what this is doing? We are also exporting our teachers away. And we are investing our own money in empowering Ghanaian, Togolese, American, and British schools and institutions. Now let's keep, if we can pay, why don't we pay at home?
Okay.
And there's something aspirational really about tertiary education, because it is from there that you get the critical human resource that you need to build a nation. Roads, bridges, finance sector, economy, and all of that. Right. So it's a win-win. But let me make this point. We recognize that there will be indigent students, and we have made provision to support indigent students. And there's really the danger that public schools begin to have the perception that they are schools for the poor. That disaggregates your society along rich and poor lines. I went to school with children of the rich and the poor. I came from a middle-class family. And this is what integrates and locks society together. Once you have the Babcocks, the Leeds, and all of that, you are creating a time bomb for the future.
But where does how does this policy fit into the free education policy, which I think your party talked about once upon a time?
Yes, the Constitution does not obligate any government really to provide free education at all levels. It makes it aspirational, subject, of course, to resources. Now, and I don't recall at any time that our manifesto in the ACN has committed to free education at all levels. We haven't.
Not at all. Some levels?
Some levels, primary and secondary. That's basic education. Those are parts of the Millennium Development Goal obligations and charters that everybody must have a basic education. But at the tertiary level, really, and I think we have a better deal here. I know for a fact that in the United States, to get a first graduate education, you take a student's loan. And even the reports coming out of the United States Treasury recently was that about $1 trillion of the national debt really is owed by graduate students. Now we're saying that go to school. We want those who can afford to pay those fees to send their children there. And that is how you can integrate community energy, community resources to build the school. Now, those who are indigent, who are able to study, also deserve a chance. And we have made provision in our budget for scholarship to support them. And in that way, we can weave together the fabric of society. And this is also what we're doing in our housing schemes. Designed 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom, so that this society can grow up together. Once you split your society along class lines, you are inviting disaster in the future.
Let's take a look at basic education. You know, I mean, yes, we're building infrastructure. As you've said, we're building classrooms, or you find that classrooms cannot teach. But even in terms of the infrastructure, would you say that there has been an even spread in even areas, say suburbs, or even other local governments outside of Lagos Central City? Say, for instance, Epe, Ikorodu, Badagry, all those places.
That's an interesting question. You'll be amazed to find out that Epe has more schools than it needs from our audit. Now, you see, government has run over the last few years trying to respond to people's needs, and everybody, including me, has claimed marginalization. So I can claim marginalization as a governor. You can claim marginalization. So government has, government has run really. But we said we were going to be a government of methods. And we began to look, how many schools have we provided and where? And we commissioned an audit. And you will find that in some schools in Ekpe, we have students 7 in a classroom.
That's just Ekpe?
And not just Ekpe, and in places like Ikorodu, you have overcrowding in some parts, you have underutilization in other parts. Ibejuleki area is an area we found out very clearly was underprovided for. And going forward in our continuous provision of schools, we have increased the ratio of what goes to Ibejuleki so that we can bridge the gap for them. And you will see, I think, just last year, we delivered more schools in that area than in other parts of the state. So we're beginning to apply solutions to where the problems are actually and to the quantum of the problem that we see there.
What about Badagry?
Badagry, off the top of my head now, I can't recall the data for Badagry, but I think where we have a problem really is Ojo. We still need more schools there, bringing them closer, especially in the rural and riverine areas.
Okay, let's talk about electricity, because at the last economic summit in Lagos, I think you harped on power, agriculture, transportation and housing. I think it was at that time too that the federal government said they had approved the building of 2 power plants in Lagos. What's going on with electricity in the state?
Well, we're still under-provided for, like many parts of the country, and you can only get really what is available. But last time I checked, Lagos was getting just about 800 megawatts, and 800 megawatts really, Lagos was Lagos Ogun. So really what we were getting was like 600 and 200 going to Ogun. But expectedly, as capacity improves, we hope that. But what we are doing is that we are also providing embedded power solutions in public utilities and places where government offices and government institutions are, and where we don't really need to distribute. And we've done that successfully on the Lagos Island, now powering the General Hospital, the Island Maternity, the Magistrates Court, the High Court, and the State House. And a couple of streets on the island now utilize also that public power at night for security. We're extending to places like Freedom Park, the Central Library, the Obas Palace, and the Lion Building. We hope that in this way we can relieve the pressure on the distribution company on the island, and whatever we give up can go to other consumers. We've done the same thing in our water works in Iju and Adinyo. We are simultaneously now developing a solution for Lekki to support our water works, and we're doing the same thing for Ikeja GRA to support the General Hospital, the police command, and the High Court there. But we hope that when the power reform thing is concluded, we will be able to really direct the way power is developed here. There are so many other problems that you are all too familiar with, and I really need you to take your time on this.
All right, we'll take a quick break, and we'll be back after this, so don't go away. Welcome back. We're continuing our interview with His Excellency Babatunde Fashola, Governor of Lagos. Talking about flooding, I know that a couple of conferences here and there about weather, climate change, global warming. But you see, the thing about it is that you can never talk enough about it to Lagosians, especially if their houses are flooded. What they just want is, how do we get out of this? Yes, there may be flash floods here and there, but beyond that, what can you tell us about flooding in the States?
Really, one really empathizes with people struggling now to manage properties, protect their assets, and there are really many sides to it, really. But let me say that we've had an unusual supply of nature's gifts, really, so to speak, too much rain in a sense. And rainfall means so many things to so many people. For those people who are displaced, it's a very traumatic season. Coming here on the Third Mainland Bridge, the number of canoes you will see out there in the lagoon is really amazing. And I learned that this is the period of harvest also for fishermen. You know, it means also extra sleep for some people when it's raining. I used to sleep extra before I came into government, but now when it's raining, I wake up because I'm concerned about people who will be displaced. And you could never over-prepare for rainfall. And then when it is rainfall that is symptomatic of unusual weather, really, you can just hope that your best has been good enough. But we could go on and on, really. It's just a very challenging time.
Because it's not as if people don't get to see your men excavate some of these drains. But again, when it happens, you still see things like this, like the visual we've seen there. This is so gotten from Ayobo Paja area. Yeah. And people wonder how long they can really get this fixed.
A lot of these parts, really, that you see are quite close either to river or canal banks. And I think that I want to make the point again, perhaps possibly with some further clarity. All the drains, or what we call drains, gutters in our colloquial language, really are not the drainage that evacuates our stormwater. They are channels to the drain. The real drainages are the rivers, the lagoons, and the creeks, and the swamp belts. That's where nature really deposits and empties the water. So within an estate, within a highway, when you see us building those bridges, we're only building channels to regulate the flow of the water to the ultimate drains. Now, if you have high rainfall across the world, Europe is going into summer. So the snow caps are melting. And they will melt into the big body of water, the Atlantic Ocean, which is the same Atlantic that serves us here. And then add that to the very intense rainfall that probably doesn't increase in the number of millimeters of rain that it delivers or is expected to deliver in a month. I think the lady from NIMET was here explaining that to you. But instead of delivering it over 1 week, it does it in 2 days. This is what you will get. So, and I think the best way to probably that I like to describe it, if you open a wash hand basin in your home and you open a tap, okay, the delivery of water is regulated to a maximum. But if you actually take a bowl of water and pour it into the same wash hand basin, it will suddenly fill up because the level of water and the intensity of supply is bigger than what that drain can discharge. And it is only when you stop, you see it begin to ease away. And as long as you have this kind of very intense rainfall, delivering more rain over a short span, you would have this irrespective of what anybody does.
People who get displaced, are you making any kind of room for them to be rehabilitated? For instance, those that have lost their homes or those who would want to leave and come back once it subsides?
Well, we have a relief camp where they can be accommodated, and we built this in anticipation of this kind of disasters, really, and we used it last year at Agboa. We're building another one at somewhere in Alimosho. I don't remember the particular name of the places. So we're already making assessments. These are phenomena that the whole world really is witnessing, and people are being displaced here and there. In some other parts of the world now, the extreme weather you have is extreme heat, and houses are burning, and really people, I think the story really is captured by the fact that this is man's continuous engagement with nature. Oftentimes man wins, sometimes nature just overcomes.
Sir, there has also, while the day we had the NIMET lady here, we also had a couple of environmentalists who made some observations as to the fact that sometimes it seems development or the rate at which population expands is faster than how the government can get to them. For instance, all the estates that are developing, it doesn't seem that government gets ahead of them to provide infrastructure or even say this is the plan we have for this area and this is what you must conform with so that we do not compound the problems that we already have.
You're quite right. I mean, what we're seeing, and environmentalists, quote and unquote, really, what we're seeing, that theory is right, and it is actually demonstrable empirically. The whole of the human civilization is migrating more to cities and has done so in the last 10 years more than it has done in the last 50 years. And the tendency will increase. So, and this is a perfect example. There is no infrastructure here. You are here. You've built. China's has built. So you're waiting for the road. And it's increasing migration to the cities, and that is something we must reverse, or we must slow down.
Is it possible?
It is always possible.
Does the administration have that in mind?
Oh yes, we do, and this is why we're focusing more on, and this is why I sign on and identify with the program, the national program on agriculture, because it's creating its own problems. As we all leave the rural areas, we're leaving food and production behind. And we're going to pay for it round the curve. You win something on the street, you pay for it at the curve.
Okay, in addition to that, a little follow-up here, because the question of supervision also comes in. Just as she said, I mean, if people are building in certain areas, are the officials of the state supposed to be there to ensure that you're supposed to maintain a certain standard here, your channel should be here, we shouldn't build here?
Of course, you might be aware that we passed new legislation on fiscal and urban planning, but the challenge is really of enforcement. We can't be everywhere, and this is why our strongest tool really is advocacy. The number of increasing voluntary compliance that we have, the better we will all be. And going back to the question that you posed, yes, there's a lot of planning going on. We are replanning the whole state, a new regional plan to be created out of 8 city master plans. We've done Victoria Island and Ikoyi, we've done Lekki, we finished Ikeja, we're working on Badagry, Ikorodu, and Lagos mainland. At the moment, we're almost done with Alimosho, so that you can see and project how the city will grow over the next 15-20 years, which infrastructure will tie them together, so that, and then how to finance the construction and the provision of the infrastructure and the total land use plan. And of course, there are some of the uninformed questions that, or uninformed opinion that is because of this that has happened. Really and truly, there will be an environmental impact of every human activity. Driving cars has its own environmental impact, fuel emissions and all of that. Farming has its own environmental impact. Building a house has its own environmental impact, because you are distorting and moving things. And what must be done always is to recognize that there's an impact, create a mitigation strategy, implement it rigorously, and monitor that it is actually a mitigation strategy. If it doesn't work, then go back to review it and find another mitigation or adaptation strategy. And nothing can be further from the truth when people suggest, for example, that it is projects like the Eco-Atlantic City that is causing flooding. It's really an uninformed and an erroneous view. Many, perhaps, who say that were unaware that where the shoreline is today is several kilometers from where it was. So really,
just constantly moving.
The sea was taking the sand. And that was a consequence of our decision to have a deep sea port in Apapa. So that was the impact of the port on the Lagos coastline. Now what we're doing first is to restore the shoreline back to where it was. So if the sea has taken something for, it would only seem logical in a very, excuse me if I can make this point, in a very simplistic and ordinary way to say, give me back what you took. But beyond that, but that is not as simplistic as it is. This is marine engineering at its peak, led by one of the most successful brand names, Royal Haskoning. And you don't do this kind of project with money under the pillow. People are financing, banks are financing. So that project has gone through all of the technical tests, pre-qualifications and all of that to ensure that it is sustainable.
Well, I'd like us to quickly jump into transportation issues because there are a whole lot for us to talk about. Now you talk about marine, but let's start with the land transportation. And you talked about Alimosho. For a moment, the Alimosho people, whether uninformed or underinformed, they thought they were abandoned until you started fixing some couple of roads and those other roads that will lead to the Iba axis and that Alimosho area coming to that their Moshashi roundabout. But they said after a moment, over a year now, the work seemed to have stopped, leading from that Moshalashi down to Ikpaja Ayobo. And the
we're still working in Ikpaja and Ayobo. And what is happening there is that we had a problem with the terrain. And instead of using asphalt, we have had to change the specification so that the road is more enduring. So we are going to interlocking bricks instead of asphalt, which we designed it for. Soil tests showed that the durability and life of the road will be prolonged if we use interlocking blocks with the concrete base. So procurement plans had to be altered. And that's what caused
we saw some of those works as well as your road gang. We had the executive head here, and we talked. But again, as soon as the rains started, the rains has not I'm glad you watched the Naimet woman. She said more rains to come. Now few rains, and all of those have been.
We haven't had quite few rains.
The downpour just started, and almost all those works you talked about have been washed away. Aren't you?
No. If we haven't finished the road, then we haven't closed up. And this is the point about not wanting to build, about rainy season not being the ideal period to build. You have a lot of wastage. You start, you stop, you mobilize materials to site, you mobilize men to site. Rain starts and you stop. So whether or not you use them, really, your sand is gone, your bitumen kicks up, your laterite washes away, and you have labor waiting, he's mobilized, so you pay. So, and you know, the impression was, oh, we can't work during the rain. It's not necessarily that work can be done. It's not just an effective time to do civil works. It's not cost effective. It doesn't save money. You don't get economies of scale. But if we haven't finished and rain comes, you will lose some of those material, but it doesn't mean that that is where we will live.
What about roads that get bad almost not long when the rains come? Quality of the road, some of them.
Now, interesting. Now, let's not forget where we came from. We spent like 15, 20 years fighting for the soul of this country. Very little governance took place. Roads were aging. Roads are perishable assets, whether you like it or you believe it or not. In a cross-section of the road, you will see its base, you will see its concrete base, you will see its binding course, you will see its wearing course. The very fact of that name, that there's a wearing course, tells you it's going to wear away. From the day you deliver it, it begins to perish. Now, unless you have a whole a properly conceived plan to say these are the roads, and that's what used to take place in the 70s, where you had Julius Berger, Taylor Woodrow, Gufanti. They had regular contracts to maintain regular parts of the city. Of course, as it spread out, it simply went out of control, and we are trying to rein it back into control. That's why you have the Public Works Corporation now fixing roads, because they will wear. Now, there are roads that we need to rebuild because they have outlived their useful lifespan. But if you don't have all of the money, make it motorable for citizens to save their vehicles, to save their agony. But that doesn't mean that that road has been fixed.
Okay.
You have only provided motoring. But the ones that we have just built are unlikely to break up for the next 15 years.
All right. Is there a disagreement between the state and the federal government about maintaining the Third Mainland Bridge?
No, there's no disagreement at all. The responsibility to maintain it is that of the federal government. The issue that I recall came up was the inaccurate information that the bridge was going to be closed. And I thought that we had the responsibility for managing traffic, and that it was appropriate to allow us to manage the communication. And you must separate road maintenance from traffic management. They're two distinct responsibilities. And in some jurisdictions, they can lie with two levels of government. In some jurisdictions, they lie with the same government.
Okay. So the Lagos State government is definitely asking to be able to manage the traffic within its jurisdiction.
We're not just asking. That's our obligation, constitutional responsibility.
Okay.
No other agency has that responsibility.
Let's go to another project that you jointly managed, the clearing of the Apapa port area. We understand that, the Lagos State government is supposed to help manage to maintain the fact that those trucks don't come back there. But reports that we're getting now say that the trucks are back.
Well, again, this is the hallmark of efficiency in interagency relationships. The reason the trucks appear to be back is that the Ports Authority have not found a way to ameliorate the 20 minutes it takes to process a truck into the place. So you will see the trucks there at night trying to get into the ports. So it takes about 20 minutes.
Okay, so they appear to be back. They're not back yet.
They're not back. They're there at night. We're enforcing during the day, but they must also do their business.
I don't know if you've been to Oshodi lately. Oshodi, once, after you did that magic in Oshodi, we thought it was going to be permanent. But report now, if you go to Oshodi, sometimes you still have this bottleneck.
Have you been?
Yes, sir.
When?
I go through Oshodi almost on a daily basis.
I think what has happened is that, you see, there's so many ways to look at traffic. For me, vehicles are a sign of prosperity in the economy. They are revenues for the state. From there, I get more money to provide water, to manage schools, from licensing and all of that. So, and any city or any state where you see vehicles, really, the sign of prosperity. And no urban agglomeration like Lagos, Accra, London, Johannesburg, New York. In fact, when I tell people and they say, look, I say, go and try to drive through New York. And I think we've lived defensively with our traffic management. Now, once you have this kind of prosperous economic, commercial and financial center, you will see vehicles. People can afford it. It's a sign of their prosperity. But now, what you need to do is manage it. That's one of the reasons we've created the traffic radio, to give you advanced predictions about what's happening, to enable you make an informed decision whether you really must be on the road, to enable you decide whether you should go out at rush hour. There's rush hour in every city.
Okay, we're running out of time, so we're trying to lump in so many things
at the same time.
Do we still expect a fourth mainland bridge, by the way?
Yes, and possibly a fifth and a sixth. If you look, we're trying to cross the Lagos Lagoon. On the River Thames, for example, you have about 17 bridges, if my last count is correct. So it's the slowdown. The Third Mainland Bridge itself was conceived sometime around 1975 or 1974, when Gowon was head of state. And that was when they started the reclamation of the outer marina. Where you drive through today as the marina was water, it was lagoon. And the whole idea was to build a beltway around Lagos so that people could exit at strategic, more like flying through Lagos. So you will see the exit at Awolowo Road, you will see the one at Obalende, you will see the one at Adeniji Adele, you will see the one at Yaba, Uroshoki, Alakpere, Bagada. But by the time it was finally completed in 1991, the population had stripped, from 75, when we were under 5 million, 2 point something million people.
Is Lagos building its own airport?
Yes, we don't intend to build, but we intend to have one. We've designed one. We're doing the soil tests, and we're putting it up for private capital. We don't want to manage. Our business is not to manage airports.
Okay.
And there are people who want to own such assets, and there are people whose core job really is airport management. So we're trying to put such a team together to finance it, because we know that our citizens could do with another airport. Why should you have to travel all the way from Lekki to come and fly from Ikeja? The City of London has Gatwick, Stansted, and all of those airports.
Sir, quickly, before we round it off, what are we doing about public transportation? What are we doing to make sure that it appeals to, say, people in the middle class, so that, yes, while we're trying to manage people and their cars, we can also encourage them to drop their cars? People are saying that the BRT bus system, which was introduced, was one successful way, but it seems that it's not being maintained, and it seems that a lot of buses are not being added to it.
We just added another fleet of 350 buses at the end of May. And we're expecting to deliver 1,000 buses. There are franchisees who have taken franchises to operate more routes. Now, putting BRT buses on require you to build BRT dedicated lanes. Mm-hmm. Now, we're doing that on the Badagry corridor. We've almost finished the joint franchise use along the Ayobo-Ipaja corridor. The bus shelters and all of that have to be built. If you don't build them, you can't put buses. We just finished Murtala Mohammed Way. Now, we don't manufacture those buses here. So the time lag between importation, between delivery, demurrage at the port before it comes out, and of course maintenance, we're just building a bus washing plant. It took so long to get the equipment in. The pipes we had to run the water through, we found out were not compatible here, so we had to bring in the special pipes. Now we've built a maintenance yard. Where are the parts? They're not here, so you have to import the parts. The maintenance yard is at Oshodi. We're expanding and building another one. So it's a time lag, really. We don't have a bus plant here.
And the light rail system?
Light rail system is going on. We are continuously progressing on the building of the tracks, which was what we signed on to build, and that was the basis for attracting investment for people who will supply the coaches, manage them, and operate them on a concession basis.
When are we likely to start seeing them or riding in them?
Well, the biggest constraint really is finance. It's the biggest constraint, financing that project. It's from the same port that I'm financing the light rail, that I'm financing schools, drugs, paying scholarships, building Senate buildings, students' arcade, providing water, so paying our debts so that I can get more money.
Before we go, tell us the latest about this Dana air crash.
Well,
for the victims especially.
That really was a very, very sad moment for all of us. And where we are now is that we have to take help from outside, really, to use science to try and identify the bodies of the deceased.
As a DNA test?
It's not just DNA test, really. I think that was the most popular thing that appealed to people, is the total scientific investigation, taking x-rays of dental structures, bone structures, body fluids, samples, and all of that. So, but we don't have a forensic lab in Nigeria. So we have to get help from outside. Now, even at this time when we have security challenges, this is one of the best investments this country can make, build a forensic lab. We have designed one. It's going to cost a lot of money, about 80 billion naira to build. I don't have that kind of money, but the designs have been completed.
Okay. Just a final one here, guys. Bolaji says he wants to know what your government and Ogun State government is doing about developing border towns as Songo, Akuti, Ojodu, Alagbole, Berger, and the likes.
We're doing a lot. One of the things that we are already working on is the road that goes to, I think, Itoekin, and there's a stretch of it that is in Ogun, and there's a stretch that is in Lagos. So we've just done first the total cost of the road, and then each state has to take its appropriated and prorated portion so that we can finance construction. And we're looking at so many other areas like that where we can increase traffic and transportation between our two states. Of course, we are also collaborating in the area of security, much more efficient border patrols and security. We're working together in the area of healthcare, the regular boundary polio immunizations that we do to make sure that people are polio free. And there will be other areas of engagement. We're working together in the area of agriculture, and people should expect to see results sooner rather than later.
Unfortunately, we couldn't talk about sports and the sports festival, but
and the economy and
because,
multiple taxation.
Oh yeah,
unfortunately,
that weighs heavy on the hearts of a lot of people here.
Yes,
they're
it
asking,
does.
but maybe we'll see what can do about it.
Is there still multiple taxation?
for some people, yes, they're complaining.
Okay.
Well, His Excellency Babatunde Fashola, Governor of Lagos State, thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you very much.